Good evening, everybody. Meteorologist Gabriel Cramp here, back for a winter forecast for the 2022-2023 winter season. This winter forecast will comprise from everything from basically mid-November through mid-March, which is considered the cold season in the northeastern United States, as well as much of the country. We're going to start by taking a look at consider some factors that we need to look at, and also we're going to see how much they're going to be worth in this forecast. So we're going to see whether there's a La Nina or an El Nino. This will be worth about 25% of the final forecast. Generally, when there's a La Nina, it favors above normal temperatures and snow, or double normal temperatures in the south and it's below normal temperatures in the north, with more snow in the north and less snow in the southern United States. We are currently in the La Nina, which does mean cold in the north, especially the north central. However, the northeast may also experience some significant cold events as well. The Arctic Oscillation, the North American Oscillation. To combine those together, and you get 20% of the official forecast. When both of those are negative, which usually happens together, cold and snowy East Coast, but the West Coast is hot and dry. This is, however, a wild card, as we won't actually know how these oscillations will play out until the winter occurs. For now, we're expecting a negative phase for both of those, which means cold and snow on the East Coast for much of the winter, especially later on in the winter. For now, it remains positive. High latitude blocking, which is present this year, which would mean that there will be a stalling nor'easter. This is when there's high pressure systems south of Greenland off the coast of Newfoundland. This causes storms to go right over the benchmark off southern New England coast and stall. When these nor'easters stall, they can produce prolific snowfall totals, especially across the Northeast. And the final factor to consider is, what do years that are similar to this year look like? So most past analog winters favor a neutral winter in the east, however, because a combination of, most of the moderate La Nina years, which is what we're currently in, about negative 1.5 degrees Celsius in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, especially the eastern portion of that ocean, they do favor more of a neutral pattern if I compiled all those analogs together. Some were warm, some were cold, none were particularly cold, none were particularly warm, however. There was one torch winter which I did eliminate as that was an outlier. And if you have an outlier in data and you know anything about statistics, you know that doesn't work. We're going to start with, a few other factors that we need to consider before getting into the official forecast. For about 10% of the weighting, I'm going to consider hurricane forecast. When it's busy and strong, it forces the hot waters off the northeast coast. This would mean that storms would slow down and strengthen more once they hit that benchmark off the southern New England coast. It could also favor potential blocking with the negative NAL and AO pattern that we saw earlier. We can also look at the Pacific North American Oscillation and the Pacific Decadonal Oscillation. Again, they're 20% of the forecast. When both of them are positive, it favors the cold in the northeast and warm in the southwest. This is a wild card as it generally changes from month to month. However, but we are favoring positive this year, which would mean cold in the east. So we're going to begin with our temperature forecast. Now I have six shades technically, although one of them isn't really a temperature shade. In our dark orange color, we have the areas that will see far above normal temperatures, more than 2 degrees above average for the entire winter. Much of coastal California, all the way up to southern Oregon, through southwestern Arizona and southern Arizona, and into western New Mexico, will see far above normal temperatures this winter. In that lighter yellow shade, we have slightly above normal temperatures, and this is an area extending from Oregon through Nevada into all of New Mexico, much of Texas, and into the southeastern states like southern Mississippi and Louisiana. This is where you can expect to see slightly milder than normal temperatures. Moving on to the white shade, this is where you can expect temperatures between, around normal, plus or minus 1 degree Celsius from your average. Moving on to the light blue region, we see a slightly below normal temperature region. This is some parts of the northern Rockies, the Plain States, the northern Appalachians, the Ozarks, and into the coastal southeast of North Carolina and southeastern Virginia. Again, slightly below normal temperatures on the order of 1 or 2 degrees below normal Celsius. In that darker blue region, which extends from the northern plains, southern Midwest, Ohio Valley, Mid Atlantic, and all of the Northeast, with the exception of upstate New York, Vermont, and portions of Maine, this is where you can feature moderately below normal temperatures, so on the order of 2, 3, 4 degrees below normal. That's where you can start to notice something, and you can say, oh, it was a cold winter. Now, this area is expected to see significantly more below normal temperatures. Where we have the most extreme cold expected is through the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region, including the eastern shores of the Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, and into northern New England. This is where we expect the most below normal temperatures, and it's interesting to note that this is slightly further east than what I had expected earlier on in the season, is because our La Nina has strengthened, and we are also expecting a positive PNA pattern this winter, which shifts the cold core of the cold just a tiny bit further east. I would have shifted this further west had the opposite happened. Now that we've seen our temperature forecast, we can take a look at our precipitation forecast, which is relatively simple. We have two areas where we can expect it to be slightly drier than normal. The first area is California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, as well as western Oklahoma and the southern Four Corner states. It will be slightly drier than normal. Nothing significant, just slightly drier than normal. Very simple. On the flip side, for the northwestern United States, in through much of the Rocky Mountains, with the exception of New Mexico, you can see slightly above normal precipitation. I would have gone with a second shade of precipitation there, above normal precipitation. However, again, that strong ridging off the west coast is making me think that's less likely this winter. However, it will be wet at times, and there may be an atmospheric river or two, especially for the northwestern, Pacific Northwestern coast, Seattle, Portland. You should prepare for some significant rain and potentially snow events. The second below normal precipitation area is for the north central and northern plains. You may be thinking, if it's cold, it's going to snow significantly. That's not necessarily true. If it is too cold, and in fact, the atmosphere is not able to support snow as it is too dry. Therefore, with a reduced amount of clipper systems and more of those 10 to west to east storms this winter predicted, I'm going to change. I'm going to put below normal precipitation for the northern plains into Minnesota. I think there won't be as much snow. I still think it'll be particularly cold, as we saw in our temperature forecast just a moment ago. Now, our main area of above normal precipitation focuses more on the northeastern United States. You can expect slightly above normal precipitation from the southern Great Lakes in through the eastern Ozarks, Midwest, and into the southeastern Mid Atlantic, northern and Appalachians. West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, etc., all included in that region. Where we have that darker green shade, and the only region in the country where we see a darker green shade is where we have moderately above normal precipitation. This region encompasses all of southern Michigan and the mid Atlantic, across the mid Atlantic, and including everywhere in the Northeast and in between. This is where there's increased confidence in more storminess than usual this winter. If you take those two forecasts to consider and you combine them together and you look at the overall pattern, you come up with a winter forecast that looks something like this. And we're going to go, as usual, from northwest on east. We're going to start in the Pacific Northwest, where I put moist, not too hot, not too cold. As we saw from our temperature forecast, it may be a little warmer than normal at times for the southern portions of those regions. However, it will be moist. It will not be too warm and it will not be too cold. It'll be about average and moist, potentially some above normal precipitation, though that remains questionable. South of there in the orange zone, I put blowtorch. Unfortunately, this year looks to be another dry and hot one for the Southwest. Something we've seen quite frequently in the past 10 years, haven't we? Feels like the old time. Yes, this coincides with the below normal precipitation and unfortunately the above normal temperatures as well. Especially with the consistent ridging out west that's favored this winter. I could see that being the blowtorch zone. Just to the east, that where I have typical mountain snows. It's worth noting that this is an average, and not every mountain peak is going to see the same amount of snow. Southern regions into New Mexico and western Texas might see significantly less snow than normal, but northern regions, such as Yellowstone, might see much more snow than normal. This just depends on where the storm track sets up. To the east of there, I put chilly and snowy. The temperatures will be normal to slightly below normal, and there will be an active storm track. It won't be as active as the northwest and northeast, but it will definitely be chilly and definitely be snowy. To the south of that region, a bit warm and a bit dry. Texas, New Mexico, southern Kansas, Oklahoma. It's expected to be just a little bit warmer than normal and a little bit drier than normal. Again, we're only on the first shade of temperature, and we're only on the first shade of precipitation, so we're not expecting it to be particularly warm or particularly dry in these regions. It's just we're leaning slightly in that direction. To the northeast of there, we have Arctic blasts. Arctic blasts extend from the Missouri Valley across to the southern Ohio Valley and into eastern Colorado and Nebraska. This is where there'll be potent Arctic blasts, especially later on in the winter, with the disruption of the polar vortex slightly. To the north of there, the North Pole, but dry. I would have left it at the North Pole, given the significantly below normal temperatures expected. However, it's looking more dry than usual with a less clipper systems. Again, when the atmosphere is too cold, we can't have snow. Unfortunately, that's the way it works. To the south of our Arctic blast zone, the zone in pink that you see stretching from northern Texas all the way to the southeastern coast and the northern Gulf states is called the slushy zone. This is where you're going to see frequent storminess, but you're also going to see a mixture of events. Some you'll see rain, snow, sleet, a combination, basically a mixed bag of precipitation and everything in between. You may end up above normal snow, below normal snow. It just depends on where you particularly live in that region. South of there, normal precipitations and normal heat. The southeast is going to see perhaps slightly below normal temperatures with that troughing in the east. In the northern regions, the northern Appalachians perhaps, and perhaps slightly warmer than normal in the western half of that region if there is ridging in the south. But overall, it's going to be typical heat and humidity for the south this winter. In the Great Lakes, including Michigan, northern Ohio Valley, and into upstate New York and Pennsylvania, lake effect snow machine. When you have below normal temperatures, like we're expecting, and remember this is the third shade of below normal temperatures, so significantly colder, plus 5 6 degrees, so 6 degrees off the average below. That's fairly significant. Combine that with some significantly above normal precipitation, like we're expected, you get lake effect snow. When the wind's blowing off the northwest, the southeastern shores of these lakes can experience prolific snowfall totals accounting to the hundreds of inches in several days. And to the east of there, the region that we're all looking forward to the most, and I know I am as a resident of the Northeast, I put numb from cold, buried, and snow. As you saw from the temperature forecast, temperatures will be moderately below normal. I would even have inched the significantly below normal temperatures on the order of 4 to 6 degrees below normal, slightly east, if it weren't for the fact that we are in a La Nina, which may tend to push the core of the cold slightly further west. You can also see that we are the only region in the Northeast here where we expect to see significantly above normal precipitation. Combine those two, cold and wet, what do you get? Snow. I think Boston, you typically see 54 inches of snow, could be looking at 90 to 110. I think Worcester, 73, 150, 130, easy possible. Maine, I think northern New England's probably going to get a little bit less due to significant coastal storminess this winter and less of those inland runners like we saw last winter, where the coast pretty much gets nothing but inland. They get prolific snowfall totals. I think the core of the cold this winter is too far east for that to happen. So there's why I'm putting buried in snow and numb from the cold. So, final thoughts. This is not going to be a classic La Nina winter, warms east and the south, and a cold north and central United States. In fact, far from it. There is a strong signal for a colder eastern United States and a warmer western United States, meaning no southeastern ridge pushing those warmer temperatures up the east coast. Concerning signals for a polar vortex split, and it's already taking place right now in the 6th to 10th of October timeframe. There's potential for winter weather very far south if a polar vortex split were to occur, just like 2 years ago. We saw that significant snowstorm in southern Texas. There is also strong correlation between a mild fall and a harsh winter in the east. And so far, our fall has been fairly typical. We haven't had particularly many cold blasts. It hasn't been too warm either. And the word mild can either mean cool or it can mean slightly warmer than average. In this case, it means about average fall and a harsh winter in the east. There is correlation between that, and I have run data analysis regression on those two significant events. It's already hot in the northern Pacific as well, and that's expected to continue and persist through the winter, meaning a positive Pacific North American oscillation. Therefore, downstream troughing, meaning a cold United States, especially the eastern half. So overall, what do I think about this winter? I think it's going to be cold. I think it's going to be significant snows, especially the eastern half of the country. I think the west, you will once out miss again on significant winter weather. Meteorologist Gabriel Cramp, I'm signing off. I'll be back next month for an update.